Hi everyone, our story starts here in the village of Angerville or Pla in France, where two young medics, Robert Wright and Kenneth Moore from the Screaming Eagles 101 Airborne, found themselves on the 6th of June 1944 D-Day. This area was under German control at the time with a heavy exchange of gunfire and mortar fire around the church. Wright was the first to arrive at the church. He had spotted it from some distance away and thought that it would make a good first aid station. Moore was the next one to arrive. He had also spotted this church and had headed for it. Unfortunate due to the chaotic nature of the drop, they had become separated from their main medical supplies. Wright had a Red Cross flag in his bag, which he actually hung or draped over the door so everybody could see that this was a first aid station. They actually found an old wooden wheelbarrow, and they would take turns going out picking up both German as well as American wounded and bringing them back in this wheelbarrow into the church. And there was no discrimination. It didn't matter to them who the soldier was. Here was one of the beautiful stained glass windows um, that was donated to this little church. The wounded were placed on the pews with their feet facing the walls, their head towards the aisle. And you'll see some of the blood stains even today on the wooden pews. You can see one here. Now, the more seriously injured were placed closer to the altar, and those that were thought not to, obviously at the time, to survive, were placed behind the altar. And there were, they say, as many as 80 um, patients brought in. So there were actually a couple of locals as well that came in. There were two girls brought in, and one of them evidently didn't survive. Although the church itself was not an intentional target, several mortars did hit the building. The worst of these incidents occurred when a mortar shell fell through the roof of the church, landing in the middle of the aisle. You'll actually see where it landed. It's actually broken one of the tiles. Wright immediately threw the shell out of the window. Had it exploded as intended, the stone walls of the church would have magnified the blast and almost certainly killed everyone inside. Part of the damaged ceiling had fallen and hit Moore, injuring him on his head. Unfortunately, he didn't have his helmet on at the time. Despite the bleeding, he continued to work. He actually, I think he received a Purple Heart um, for this. And here we have the two pictures in this little memorial in front of us. And both of these medics received the Silver Star. On the right there, that little back arm patch, it's got airborne, and that's the Screaming Eagle patch for the 101st Airborne. What is amazing, that out of 80 casualties, they only lost two patients. Um, that's incredible. To think that they were working with minimal equipment, medical equipment. Um, just in front of Timothy. This is where the more seriously injured patients would have been kept closer to the altar, and those that were critical and had no chance of survival were placed behind the altar. This, just in front of you on the floor on the left-hand side, you'll see a very ancient text that dates back to the 11th century. This shows how old this church is. In front of us, above the altar, are the two saints, Saint Cosmas and Saint Damien. They're the saints that give this church its name. And they both were physicians in their days and martyred for their beliefs. I'll tell you a little bit more about them later on in the video. Did you know the 101st Airborne Division's Screaming Eagles nickname originated from their insignia, a bald eagle on a black shield? The eagle on the patch is named Old Abe in honor of President Abraham Lincoln and was originally the mascot of Wisconsin Regiment during the Civil War. This beautiful stained glass window was dedicated to Robert Wright and Kenneth Moore. The red flag that you see in that stained glass window refers to the Red Cross flag that Robert Wright hung over the door just to warn people that this was a first aid station. Ahead of us are those double doors there. I think those are the doors that were kicked open by a German soldier. He stood there with his machine gun, and when he realized that these two medics were treating both the Germans as well as the American soldiers injured, he made the cross, sign of the cross, turned around and left. Wright and Moore insisted that any wounded soldier, whether American or German, brought into the church for medical treatment must leave their weapons outside. Even when German soldiers entered, they reportedly complied with the medics' demands to disarm, and they respected the Red Cross flag that had been placed on the church door outside. You can once again see the vivid blood stains that are still on these pew seats. There were actually two German soldiers that had climbed up into the church tower and were hiding there. They actually came down a bit later on, surrendered, and actually subsequently helped the medics treat the wounded. The battle actually raged outside for 3 days, with the village changing hands several times. All the while, Wright and Moore kept tending the wounded from both sides, refusing to actually leave the church. Um, so that was incredibly brave on their behalf. Cosmas and Damien are twin brothers known as the moneyless ones because they practiced medicine as a service to humanity and did not ask for compensation. They were born in the 3rd century Arabia and were trained in science and medicine in Syria. As Christians, they believed that healing the body was a work of charity. The example of goodness and their service to the sick brought many people to Christ. They were arrested and beheaded for their faith around the year 283. Miracles of healing were attributed to them after their death, sometimes with the brothers appearing to people suffering from illness and curing them. They are recognized as patron saints of physicians, surgeons, pharmacists, and dentists. Late in life, Robert Wright expressed his wish to be buried at the church. While international regulations prohibited this, some of his ashes were smuggled into France to be buried in the churchyard. The unofficial headstone reads REW, Wright's initials.